I never thought loss could happen while someone was still breathing. People think loss comes with funerals, white cloth, and crying crowds. They think it comes with death certificates and last goodbyes. But my loss came quietly. It came with wedding invitations, smiling photos, and a house that slowly became silent. I am a mother. That is the most important thing I have ever been. Before I was anything else, before I had a name people used, I was a mother. And my son was my whole world long before he learned to walk or speak. I remember the day he was born. It was early morning. The sky was pale, and the hospital room smelled like clean sheets and medicine. When they placed him in my arms, he was so small that I was afraid to breathe too hard. I whispered, "I am here," even though he could not understand me. From that day on, my life followed his rhythm. When he slept, I rested. When he cried, my heart ran to him before my feet did. I learned his face better than my own. I knew his hunger cry, his tired cry, and the cry that meant he just wanted me close. As he grew, our house was full of sound. His footsteps running down the hallway. His laughter spilling from room to room. His voice calling, "Mom," like it was the safest word he knew. I was not a perfect mother. I made mistakes. Sometimes I was tired. Sometimes I was strict when I should have been soft. But everything I did with love. When his father passed away, it became just the two of us. The house felt bigger then. The nights felt longer. But my son filled the empty spaces without knowing it. I worked hard. I cooked. I cleaned. I saved money slowly, one small amount at a time. I told myself that as long as he was happy and safe, I could handle anything. He grew into a kind boy. Quiet, respectful, the kind of son neighbors praised and relatives admired. People would say, "You raised him well." And my heart would swell every time. Because that praise felt like proof that my sacrifices mattered. When he went to college, the house changed again. His room stayed the same, but the air felt different. I still cooked his favorite food even when he was not home. I still waited for his calls. Every time he came back, the house breathed again. He would sit at the kitchen table, scrolling on his phone, asking what was for dinner. And I would think, this is enough. This is my happiness. Then one day, he told me he wanted to get married. He said it casually, like he was telling me about the weather. I smiled. I congratulated him. I hugged him. Inside, something shifted. Not pain, not fear, just a quiet awareness that life was about to change in ways I could not control. I told myself this was normal. Every mother faces this day. Every son grows up. I met his wife before the wedding. She was polite, soft-spoken. She smiled the right amount. She called me, Auntie, with respect. I wanted to like her. I really did. And at first, I thought I did. The wedding was beautiful. Lights, music, laughter. People congratulating me, saying, "Your son is starting a new life." I smiled through it all. I posed for pictures. I stood beside them like I belonged there. But after the wedding, the silence came. Not immediately. It came slowly, like a shadow stretching longer every day. At first, it was small things. He stopped calling every night. Then he stopped asking what I was doing. Then he stopped coming home without planning first. He moved out. I helped pack his things. I folded his clothes carefully, like I always had. When he left, I stood at the door and waved until I could not see him anymore. That night, I sat alone at the kitchen table. The clock ticked louder than usual. The house felt like it was holding its breath. I told myself not to be dramatic. This was marriage. This was life. But days passed. Then weeks. When I called him, he sounded busy. Tired. Distracted. "I'll call you later, Mom," he would say. Later became tomorrow. Tomorrow became next week. When he did visit, he came with her. He sat beside her. He listened to her more than to me. Our conversations changed. They became polite, short, careful. I noticed how she corrected him when he spoke. How she decided when they would leave. How she smiled at me without warmth. I tried to be kind. I tried to stay quiet. I told myself not to interfere. But one day, I realized something that broke my heart. My son no longer saw me as his home. He saw me as a place to visit. I would cook his favorite meals, and he would eat quickly, checking his phone. I would ask about his life, and he would give short answers. The closeness we once had felt like a memory fading with time. One evening, I asked him, very softly, "Are you happy?" He nodded. "Yes, Mom," but he did not look at me. After that, I stopped asking questions. The distance grew quietly, no fights, no arguments, just space. Holidays came and went. Sometimes he visited, sometimes he did not. When he did not come, I told people he was busy. I defended him even when my heart ached. I watched families together on television, mothers laughing with their sons, and I wondered when my place had been taken without anyone telling me. I did not hate his wife. I still do not, but I learned that love can change shape, and sometimes, it leaves no room for what came before. One day, I realized I had not heard my son's laughter in months. That realization felt heavier than any argument could have. I did not lose my son to death. I lost him to marriage. To a life where I no longer fit. Now, my days are quiet. I wake up. I make tea for one. I sit by the window when it rains. Sometimes I hold my phone and scroll through old photos. His childhood smile, his school uniform, his arms around me when he was younger. I do not cry loudly. I do not complain. I have learned that some losses do not announce themselves. They arrive softly, and they stay. But I also learned something else. My love for my son does not end because he chose a different life. Love does not disappear just because it is not returned the same way. I am still his mother. Even if my role is quieter now. And maybe that is the lesson. Sometimes, loving someone means letting them go without bitterness. Without anger. Without holding their happiness against them. I sit in my quiet house and remind myself of this truth. I did not lose my son. I gave him life. And then I gave him freedom. And even in the silence, that will always matter. The silence did not scare me at first. I told myself it was just a phase, something temporary, something that would pass on its own. Every marriage needs space, I reminded myself. Every new home needs time to settle. I repeated these thoughts often, like small prayers meant to calm my heart. I kept my phone close, always within reach. Not because I wanted to disturb him. Not because I expected constant attention. But because a mother's heart never really rests. It only waits, quietly, without asking for permission. Sometimes days passed without a message. One day would slip into the next without his name lighting up my screen. I would pick up my phone, type his name, stare at it for a moment, then delete it. Again and again. I did not want to sound needy. I did not want to become a burden in a life that was no longer centered around me. Slowly, without realizing it, I started measuring time differently. Not by weeks or months. Not by calendars hanging on the wall. But by how long it had been since I last heard his voice. 3 days felt longer than 3 years used to. When he did call, I smiled before answering. I trained my voice to sound light, even if my heart was tired. Even if I had been sitting alone all day, watching the same shadows move across the room. "How are you, Mom?" he would ask. "I am fine," I would say. Because that answer was easier than explaining the quiet heaviness in my chest. Easier than telling the truth that did not fit into a short phone call. I noticed something small but painful. I was always the one saying goodbye first. Always the one ending the call gently. Because I could feel when his attention drifted away. I could sense when he was no longer fully there. Sometimes I could hear her voice in the background. Calling him from another room. Asking him something simple, something ordinary. And every time, he would say the same words. "I'll talk to you later, Mom." Later slowly became a word that felt empty. A promise without shape. A door that never fully opened. I began talking to the walls of my house. Not out loud, just in my heart. I would stand in the kitchen, holding a cup of tea that had gone cold, and let memories rise quietly. I remembered how he used to sit there as a child, swinging his legs because they could not reach the floor. How he would tell me stories about school that did not really make sense, but I listened anyway. How he trusted me with everything, even his fears, even his small secrets. Now, I did not know what his days looked like. I did not know what made him laugh. I did not know what made him tired. I no longer knew the rhythm of his life. Once, I visited his house. I had called first. I always called first now. I never showed up unannounced. I did not want to intrude. She opened the door. She smiled politely, the kind of smile that stays on the surface. She asked me to sit. My son hugged me quickly. Not the long hugs he used to give when he was younger. Just a light one, careful and brief. I sat on the edge of the sofa. I did not want to take too much space. I did not want to seem like I was staying too long. My body stayed slightly forward, ready to leave at any moment. She served tea. She talked about her plans, her work, her friends, her busy days. I listened. I nodded. I smiled. I chose my silence carefully. My son stayed quiet. He looked comfortable, but distant. Like someone balancing between two worlds. At one point, the truth settled into me, slow and heavy. He was a guest in my life now. Just like I was a guest in his. When I left, he walked me to the door. He held it open. He said, "Drive safely, Mom." That was all. No, stay longer. No, come again soon. Just polite care, not longing. As I walked away, my chest felt tight. Not because of anything that was said, but because of everything that was not. That night, I could not sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the quiet sounds of the house. I replayed moments again and again in my mind, trying to find where I went wrong. Was I too strict, too soft, too present, too involved? But deep down, I knew this was not about mistakes. This was about change. Marriage had reshaped him, not in a bad way, just in a way that no longer included me the same way. I stopped expecting things, because expectations hurt more than silence. They create hope where there is none. I stopped calling often. I waited for him to call me. Sometimes he did. Sometimes he did not. On my birthday, I waited all day. I told myself not to check the clock. But I did. Again and again. In the evening, my phone buzzed. "Happy birthday, Mom," he said. I thanked him. I told him not to worry. I told him I was happy. After the call ended, I sat quietly. There was no cake, no celebration, just gratitude mixed with sadness, sitting side by side. I learned how to smile with a full heart and empty hands. I watched other mothers complain about their sons, about short visits, about missed calls. I stayed quiet, because explaining my pain felt harder than carrying it alone. Sometimes, I wondered if he missed me, if he ever sat quietly and thought about me, the way I thought about him every day. Then one day, something happened that stayed with me. I fell sick. Nothing serious, just weakness, the kind that makes even small tasks feel heavy. I did not tell him at first. I did not want to worry him. I did not want to interrupt his life. But when it got harder, I called. He listened. He sounded concerned. He said he would come. He did not. Later, he called again. He said work was busy. He said he would visit soon. I said it was okay. I said I understood. That night, lying alone in my bed, I finally allowed myself to feel the truth. I was no longer his first call. And that realization did not come with anger. It came with acceptance. I understood that my son was building a life. And I was part of his past, not his present. From that day on, I changed quietly. I stopped waiting by the phone. I stopped checking messages late at night. I started focusing on myself. I watered my plants slowly. I read old books I had ignored for years. I took slow walks in the evening, letting the air calm my thoughts. I learned how to sit with my loneliness instead of fighting it. Some nights, it still hurts. Some nights, the house feels too quiet, too still, but I remind myself of something important. I did not raise my son to stay. I raised him to grow. And growth often means distance. If love is real, it does not demand. It only hopes. And so I hope, silently, patiently, even if he never comes back the same way. I will always leave the door open. Because a mother's heart does not close. It only learns to wait without noise. With time, the waiting changed shape. It did not disappear, but it softened. It no longer felt sharp enough to cut me every day. It became something I could carry without thinking about it all the time. I stopped counting days. At first, I did it on purpose. I told myself to stop looking. I told myself to stop looking at the calendar, to stop marking time. Later, it happened naturally. Days passed without asking for attention. I stopped measuring silence too. I no longer tried to decide if silence meant distance or peace. I let it be what it was. I let moments come as they were. Some were heavy, some were light, most were quiet. In the mornings, I opened my windows wide. I did it even when the air was cold. I wanted the house to breathe. I wanted myself to breathe. I let fresh air move through the rooms, touching the curtains, brushing against old furniture, carrying sounds from outside. I told myself the house was still alive, even if it was quiet. Quiet did not mean empty. It just meant different. I began noticing small things again. Things I had stopped seeing when my heart was busy waiting. The sound of birds in the early hours. Not loud, not demanding. Just steady, patient sounds that reminded me life continued. The way sunlight rested on the floor in the morning. How it moved slowly across the room, changing shape as the day went on. How it warmed the same spot every afternoon. The comfort of routine. Making tea the same way every day. Watering plants at the same time. Folding laundry in quiet order. Some people think loneliness is loud. They imagine crying. They imagine shouting into empty rooms. But loneliness is gentle. It does not scream. It sits beside you. It breathes slowly. It waits without asking questions. I learned to sit with it. Not to fight it. Not to push it away. Just to let it exist without fear. Sometimes, memories came without warning. I would be folding laundry, and suddenly I would remember folding his small clothes when he was young. Tiny shirts. Soft fabric. Clothes that felt warm from the sun. I would cook rice and remember how he liked it just a little softer than others. How he would notice if it was not right. How he trusted me to know these small details. I never pushed those memories away. I stopped telling myself not to think about the past. Instead, I let memories pass through me like soft rain. They did not stay long. They did not drown me. They simply reminded me of what had been. One afternoon, he came to visit unexpectedly. No call, no warning. When I opened the door and saw him standing there, my heart jumped before I could stop it. For a moment, I forgot how to breathe. I tried not to show it. "Come in," I said, calmly. My voice surprised me. It sounded steady. He looked older, not just in age, in posture, in the way he stood. He looked more settled, more certain, more distant. We sat together. The space between us felt larger than the room itself. We talked about simple things. Weather, work, daily routines. Nothing deep, nothing personal. I wanted to ask so many questions. I wanted to ask if he was happy. If he ever missed home. If he still thought of me. But I did not. I understood something in that moment. Some questions do not need answers. Some answers would only hurt. Before leaving, he said something that stayed with me. "You're doing okay, Mom." I looked at him. I smiled. "Yes," I said. And for the first time, it was not a lie. After he left, I sat quietly. I did not rush to clean. I did not replay the visit again and again. Instead, I realized something important. I had survived this change. Not perfectly, not without pain, but I had survived. That realization gave me strength I did not know I had. It did not make everything better. But it made everything possible. I stopped seeing myself as abandoned. That word felt heavy, and it did not fit anymore. I started seeing myself as transformed. Not left behind, just changed. I was no longer a full-time mother. I was something else now. Something quieter, something steadier. A woman with her own life. Her own thoughts. Her own pace. I still loved him the same. That love did not shrink. It did not fade. But I no longer expected him to fill my days. I no longer waited for him to give my life meaning. There were moments of weakness. There always are. Like when I saw mothers walking with their sons. Laughing together. Sharing stories. Or when relatives asked, "Why doesn't he visit more?" I answered gently, "He is busy." And I meant it without bitterness. Without defense. Without shame. One evening, I wrote him a letter. Not to send. Just to release what was inside me. I sat at the table with a blank page. I did not rush. I let words come slowly. I wrote about his childhood. About the first time he called me Mom. About the way he used to fall asleep holding my hand. I wrote about how proud I was of him. Not just for what he achieved, but for who he became. I wrote about how love changes shape but never disappears. How it stretches. How it learns new ways to exist. When I finished, I folded the letter carefully and placed it in a drawer. I did not need him to read it. I needed myself to write it. Forgiveness came slowly. Not forgiveness for him. He had done nothing wrong. Forgiveness for myself. For expecting a bond to remain unchanged forever. For holding on to a version of life that no longer existed. Life does not work that way. It moves forward, whether we are ready or not. One day, I realized something gentle and true. My son did not leave me. He walked forward, and I stayed behind only because I refused to move at first. So I started moving too. I joined a small community group. Nothing grand, just people who met to talk and share time. I talked to people my age. I listened to their stories. Some were heavy, some were light. I laughed again, not loud. Laughter, not the kind that fills a room. Soft laughter, the kind that comes from peace. The kind that does not need an audience. When my son called, I listened without tension. I did not analyze his tone. I did not count minutes. When he did not call, I did not ache the same way. The silence did not feel like rejection anymore. I learned the difference between love and attachment. Love wishes well. It hopes. It supports from a distance. Attachment demands presence. It asks for reassurance. It fears change. I chose love. Sometimes, late at night, I still whisper his name. Not in pain, not in longing, but in gratitude, because he gave my life meaning once. He shaped my days. He filled my years with purpose. And that meaning does not disappear just because the chapter ended. I am not less now. I am not empty. I am not forgotten. I am different. And different is not a loss. It is growth. As time went on, I stopped asking life to give me back what it had already changed. At first, this letting go felt like another kind of loss. It felt like giving up on hope. But slowly, I realized it was not giving up. It was choosing peace. There were days when I still caught myself wishing for the past. Wishing for the sound of his footsteps in the house. Wishing for the way he used to call my name without thinking. But I learned that wishing does not bring comfort. It only keeps the heart restless. I learned that peace does not come from getting things the way they were. It does not come from fixing the past in our minds. Peace comes from accepting things as they are, even when they feel unfamiliar. Even when they feel quiet. Even when they feel smaller than before. My son still visits sometimes. Not often, but enough. Enough to remind me that love does not disappear. Enough to remind me that bonds do not break just because they stretch. Enough to let me see that our relationship still exists, just in a new form. When he comes, I no longer prepare for days in advance. There was a time when I cleaned every corner of the house. When I planned meals carefully. When I rehearsed conversations in my head. Now, I do not do that anymore. I no longer clean the whole house like it is an event. I no longer exhaust myself trying to make everything perfect. I make tea. I sit. I listen. That is enough now. I do not watch the clock anymore when he is here. I do not count how long he stays. I do not worry about when he will leave. I let the moment be what it is, without trying to hold it too tightly. He talks about his life. His work. His plans. The future he is building piece by piece. Sometimes I do not understand everything he says. Sometimes his world feels far from mine. But I listen anyway. Sometimes he laughs. And when he does, my heart smiles quietly. It is not the loud happiness I once knew. It is softer, gentler. He still calls me, Mom. That word still carries warmth. It still holds years of love, care, and shared history. It still reminds me that no matter how life changes, some things remain. I understand now that love does not always stay close. It does not always sit beside us. Sometimes it learns to live at a distance. Sometimes it speaks through small moments instead of daily presence. There was a time when I thought motherhood ended when a child left home. When the house became quiet. When my days no longer revolved around someone else's needs. But I know better now. Motherhood does not end. It changes shape. It becomes quieter, less visible, less recognized by the world. but no less real. It lives in silent prayers, in concern that comes without being spoken, in love that expects nothing in return. I no longer wait to be needed. I no longer sit with the hope that someone will call and give my day meaning. I no longer measure my worth by how often my son checks in. I have learned to stand on my own life. This was not easy. It took time. It took many quiet mornings and long evenings. I wake up with intention now. I do not rush out of habit. I move through my mornings slowly. I notice the taste of my tea, the sound of the morning outside, the stillness that used to frighten me. I move through my day with care. I choose what brings me calm. I choose what brings me peace. I rest without guilt now. I no longer tell myself that rest must be earned through exhaustion. I allow myself pauses. I talk to myself with kindness. I do not blame myself for what I could not control. I do not punish myself for changes that were always meant to happen. I remind myself, again and again, that I did my best. With what I knew, with what I had, with the love I carried. Some evenings, I sit outside as the sky darkens. I let the air cool my face. I watch the light slowly fade. I watch lights turn on in other houses. One window at a time. Each light telling a quiet story of life continuing. I imagine families sitting together. People resting after long days. Children being tucked into bed. Conversations happening behind walls I cannot see. And in those moments, I feel connected again. Not lonely. Not left out. Just part of a larger world, where every life moves in its own way. I understand now that every relationship has seasons. Some seasons are loud, full of closeness, shared meals, shared worries, shared days. Other seasons are silent, marked by distance, marked by fewer words. Both matter. Both are real. Both teach us how to love differently. If I could speak to other mothers, I would tell them this. Do not blame yourself when your child grows away from you. Growing away does not mean growing without love. It means growing into a life of their own. Do not search for mistakes that do not exist. Do not replay your parenting with regret. You did what you could with the heart you had. Do not hold their happiness against them. Their joy does not cancel your sacrifice. Their independence does not erase your role. Do not turn love into pain by demanding it look the same forever. Love that survives change is stronger than love that depends on closeness. We raise children to live. Not to stay, not to remain within our reach forever. We raise them to walk forward, to choose, to grow, and if they live well, if they find peace, if they build lives that give them meaning, even far from us, then we have succeeded. I did not lose my son to death. I did not lose him to cruelty. I did not lose him to anger or resentment. I lost him to life, to time moving forward, to love changing form, to growth that cannot be reversed. And that is a loss I can accept with grace. Because love that lets go is still love. Love that does not demand is still love. And a mother's heart, even when quiet, even when no longer at the center of someone's world, is never empty. It is full of years, full of memories, full of meaning, and that is enough.